Mass Effect 2 is my personal favorite game of all time. I've played the entire trilogy 13 times and I'm currently on my 14th and 15th run of all 3 games again. I love Mass Effect, and I love Mass Effect 2. I think that's probably a good place to start. I'm one of the biggest Mass Effect 2 fans in existence. I'm not a hater, I'm not some person who just trashes everything that BioWare or EA does. If for some reason you found your way to this video and you're not familiar with my channel or my podcast, go ahead and ask one of the regulars. I absolutely love Mass Effect, and I am by all accounts a pretty big fan of BioWare. It's actually because I'm such a big fan of Mass Effect that I'm replaying the trilogy yet again since the Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out. I've already finished beating ME1 and ME2 and I'm well into ME3 now, and it's while I've been replaying these games that it's started to hit me. Mass Effect 2 is overrated. Hello and welcome to the Exalted March. Today we're going to be talking about Mass Effect 2, and one of the things that I want you to understand clearly is exactly what I'm claiming. I'm claiming that Mass Effect 2 is overrated. I'm not claiming it's a bad game, I'm not claiming it's subpar, hell, I'm not even claiming that it's average or good. By all accounts, Mass Effect 2 is a great game, and nothing I say in this video is intended to change your mind about that. My claim is simply this: Mass Effect 2 is rated too highly. Which then begs the question, of course, how exactly is Mass Effect 2 rated in my mind anyway? Well, it's clearly one of the greatest games of all time. It's clearly one of the greatest RPGs of all time, I'm not questioning any of that. But it's also talked about as perhaps the best BioWare game ever. And although Mass Effect fans certainly like to debate which game in the trilogy is the best overall Mass Effect game, in the wider gaming community and in the gaming press, Mass Effect 2 is easily the most often chosen as the best Mass Effect game. And that's really what I'm treating as my premise, that the broad majority opinion is that Mass Effect 2 is the best in the Mass Effect trilogy. Now, I know that not everyone thinks that. During one of my recent live streams, I posed this question to my viewers, and many of them said that ME1 was actually their favorite, and some even said that ME3 was their favorite despite the ending. But if you look at the major gaming hubs, major publications, Reddit, Metacritic, or other mainstream venues, Mass Effect 2 is the clear winner in most cases. So what I'm claiming is simply that Mass Effect 2 is not the best game in the trilogy. All of my arguments will be based on that claim, and quite frankly, I think it's actually an easy case for me to win. Again, I don't have to argue against Mass Effect 2's greatness, or make it seem like it's a crap game. All I have to do is get you to notice a few chinks in its otherwise pristine armor, and help you to notice some of the strengths of ME1 and ME3 that you may have missed. So, with that in mind, let's talk about when I started to notice that this was true. Like I said, I've been playing the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, and if you've also been playing the Legendary Edition, then you should know where I'm about to go with this, which is Mass Effect 1 is really, really good. And when I say good, I mean great. And when I say great, I mean it was always great, but you know what I mean. ME1 stepped its goddamn game up in Legendary Edition. Like, the one legitimate knock on ME1 was always the combat. It was janky, it was clunky, it was imprecise, and for those reasons it could often be frustrating. Now, like I said, I've played it 13 times. I got used to it. Like, seriously, I could sit here and try and trash it all day long, but the honest truth is, I even started to like the janky combat of Mass Effect 1 after a while because I got really good at it. When they improved the combat in Legendary Edition, though, that sort of changed everything. Even though it was just combat, now Mass Effect 1 becomes the total Mass Effect experience without the need for an asterisk next to it. It no longer has that one glaring flaw, and if you combine that with the fact that it was always the best in terms of lore and world building, since it is the first game in the trilogy, you have a pretty compelling argument right there that it is the best Mass Effect game. Just think about how much Mass Effect has to set up. 9 alien species, a galactic government and ruling body, humanity's state of affairs 2 centuries in the future, multiple forms of faster-than-light travel, biotics in Element 0, virtual intelligence, artificial intelligence, an ancient alien sentient machine race hellbent on destroying the galaxy, indoctrination, the Spectres and other factions like Cerberus and the STG, and tons of other historical contexts like the First Contact War, the Rachni War, the Morning War, the Krogan Rebellions, and literally a whole bunch of other stuff that would take me too long to mention. Mass Effect 1 brilliantly and rather seamlessly, all things considered, put together an entire galaxy of aliens and AI and ancient legends, and made it feel real, made it feel like you could actually see yourself living out this adventure as Commander Shepard. No matter how much we love Mass Effect 2 and 3 for how they expanded on this basis, there's no way that you can take away from the fact that ME1 did something that no other game in this franchise hell, that no other game ever has done in terms of world building. And there's even more, way more that I could say about Mass Effect 1 in detail, believe me. RPG systems and customization, yeah, possibly the best in the trilogy. Actual planet exploration, again, easily outclasses ME2 and 3. Having true neutral options on the dialogue wheel, okay, you know what, I'm getting ahead of myself because we can talk about some of that during the ME2 section of the video. Let's pause for a second and talk about ME3. And before we do that, let me say something to those of you who are only here to bellyache and moan about the ending and how EA ruins everything and Mad Gamer rant, BioWare sucks, yada yada, Eric Estrada. Look, it's been a really long, almost decade since Mass Effect 3 came out. Like, a lot of shit has happened. COVID, most of my 20s, heartache, mistakes, economic downturn. So in light of all that, I'm only gonna say this once. Shut the fuck up. The Mass Effect 3 ending wasn't even that bad, and the extended cut fixed the glaring holes. I know, it wasn't my favorite ending either, believe me. I have written dissertation-length essays about what was wrong with it. I know what was wrong with it about as well as anyone, okay? I watched those Mr. B-Tongue videos back in 2012 too, but enough's enough already. Give it a rest. I don't want to spend the rest of my life complaining about the ending of Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect 3 has some of the best Mass Effect stuff that we've just ever seen. You cure the genophage in Mass Effect 3. You resolve the Quarian Geth conflict. You kill multiple Reapers, including killing one by throwing a goddamn giant Thresher Maw at it. It took all of Mass Effect 1 to kill one Reaper, and in ME3, Shepard just drops like multiple Reapers before the Crucible is even complete. In Mass Effect 3, you become the most famous, most powerful, most badass person in the history of the galaxy, and it feels earned. Unlike a lot of other games, it doesn't feel rushed or exaggerated or hand-wavy. It feels like you earned that, like you legitimately have to pull together the disparate factions in a fight for the fate of the galaxy. The stakes are almost never small in a Mass Effect game, but in Mass Effect 3, they're astronomical, they're massive. And yet, despite all that, despite those huge stakes, it manages some of the most personal and grounded content ever in a Mass Effect game. Take the Citadel DLC, for example. The Citadel DLC is a big, giant, sappy love letter to the entire franchise and almost universally beloved, despite actually being sort of cliche. The Citadel DLC is so good that it pushes past any surface-level objections about its campy nature because it gets right to the heart of why so many people love Mass Effect. And that is the companions. Yes, the plot of the actual story in Citadel DLC makes no sense, but that is literally besides the point. The point is, we made it. We're the best. We're all space super friends who are so awesome. Let's go shoot bad guys and then throw ourselves a party afterwards. It's so saccharine that it shouldn't be able to work, but after spending so much time with these characters and how believable they are, it just does. And that's not the only time ME3 pulls something like that off. The sniper competition with Garrus on top of the Presidium, meeting up with Liara or Kaidan or Joker on the Citadel to just catch up and reflect on how far you've come. Mass Effect 3 really took the time to focus on those relationships and the characters of the trilogy in a way that neither of the first two games did. Mass Effect 3 takes the great world building and lore setup in ME1 and then lets you take some of the biggest events in galactic history and rewrite them, shape history. And yet even with such a grand scale as that, when Ashley reads you one of her favorite poems or when Liara tells you what she remembers about her mother, you feel at home with these characters. A galaxy of peril and boon feels real to you because of the personal relationships with these characters. So yeah, Mass Effect 3 is better than you remember. And that's also not even talking about the combat, the return to better RPG systems from ME1, the weapon weight system, or the much improved combo detonation system, or the multiplayer. I know that's not in the Legendary Edition, but remember how we all swore we were gonna hate multiplayer in Mass Effect and never play it, but we ended up loving it? Remember that? Yeah, that was Mass Effect 3 too. That was all part of Mass Effect 3, not just the last 20 minutes. Now I know what some of you must be thinking, right? We're like 10 minutes into this video and there hasn't actually been too much talk about Mass Effect 2, and especially ME2's flaws and shortcomings and criticisms that I might have of the game. And that's been entirely intentional thus far, because as I said earlier, the claim I'm making is not that Mass Effect 2 is a bad game, but that against its peers, it has been ranked too high. Part of this video, a major part in fact, is to get people to recognize just how good, how underrated ME1 and ME3 are. Not just to talk about ME2's flaws. But With that said, we do need to talk about Mass Effect 2 and some of the things that just should have been way better. Starting off with what is a major drawback of Mass Effect 2, and that is that it is a significantly less robust RPG compared to the other two games. Now again, I'm not saying it's terrible, I'm just saying that compared to ME1 and ME3, ME2 can't be called the best role-playing game in the series. Just look at the level up screen from any of these games and it's clear which title was trying to quote-unquote streamline in order to pick up more of a mainstream audience. Mass Effect 2 devastated the skill tree menu, stripping it down to just a couple of powers and a passive skill tree. Mass Effect 1 did way more in terms of quantity and depth as far as how you could upgrade your skill tree, and Mass Effect 3 did more in terms of quantity and quality by adding choices to 3 of the 6 upgrade levels where ME2 only had 1 branching choice. Mass Effect 2 also did away entirely with weapon customization. ME1 and ME3 both have multiple mod slots for weapon customization, and ME1 has a robust system for armor modifications as well. Another thing to consider is that the dialogue system in ME2 is considerably pared down compared to ME1, and there are virtually no middle options for neutrality. This is something that I keep asking people to go back to and take a look at. In ME1, that middle right option on the dialogue wheel was one of the most satisfying options you could take. Instead of just straight Paragon or Renegade, Shepard would have some really well-written dialogue showcasing just how savvy of a character that they can be. In ME2, that's mostly gone except for when the game only gives you the option of choosing Renegade or a middle option, I guess in some attempt to emphasize that this was the dark middle chapter of the trilogy, so there's literally no Paragon option. I don't know, maybe in 2010 that was like edgy cool or something, but now it just seems like an RPG with less roleplay options. But okay, roleplay options aside, ME2 still has plenty going for it, right? I mean, yes, it does. Again, it's a great game. But what is it actually the best at in the entire trilogy? Okay, how about combat, right? I mean, everybody knows that ME2 is the best combat in the series. It's what catapulted the franchise to true greatness, right? Actually, no. You know what I realized when I was playing the Legendary Edition is that Mass Effect 2 absolutely does not have the best combat in the series. Actually, I realized that Mass Effect 3's combat is better than Mass Effect 2's hands down like half a dozen playthroughs ago, but what I really realized during this most recent playthrough is that if you also count Andromeda into the mix, ME2's combat is really just middle of the road. If I was ranking just combat in the series, I would put ME3 at the top, followed by Mass Effect Andromeda, then ME2, then ME1. And quite honestly, with the improvements to ME1's combat in the Legendary Edition, and the fact that it has more varied power usage and gear customization, I could make the argument that ME1 actually has a more unique and more fun combat system than ME2. That could actually put ME2 dead last in terms of combat, the category in which it's supposed to be number 1. And specifically on the issue of ME2's combat, where to even begin? Look, it's not bad combat. Again, my claim is not that anything about ME2 is awful, but just that it's not as good compared to its peers as we thought it was. Take combo detonations, for instance. That's a huge part of Mass Effect combat. ME3 and even Andromeda do a way better job of incorporating combo detonations and making them super fun. ME1 actually has more powers overall to use in general and way more ways to customize your character and your squad mates. There are way more weapon choices and weapon customization in ME1, and weapon customizations are just cooler in ME3 than they are in ME2. The cover system and the way that cover is laid out across battlefields is way more engaging in ME3, and don't even get me started on the verticality and non-linear staging areas for fights in Andromeda, which is way ahead of even ME3 in that regard. I've always expected ME1's combat to feel sluggish and outdated, and so in juxtaposition, ME2's combat always felt like a relief to get through when replaying the trilogy, but for the first time ever, ME1's combat didn't suck, and so ME2's combat, while still arguably an improvement in some ways, just really started to show its age now that it didn't have old ME1 combat to make it look good. Again, I will repeat this over and over again. I'm not saying Mass Effect 2's combat is bad. I'm just saying that it's no longer a huge leap over ME1's combat, and quite frankly, there was never a single thing about ME2's combat that is actually superior to combat in ME3. All of it is either equal to or not as good as combat in ME3. And the same can be said about role-playing choices, dialogue, and world building for ME1. So Mass Effect 1 is really the best science fiction role-playing game, and Mass Effect 3 is the best overall action role-playing game. That leaves Mass Effect 2 as second or third place in most, if not all, categories. When you consider this, How can you possibly say that Mass Effect 2 is the best game of the trilogy? I said at the beginning of this video and throughout this video that the goal was not to bash ME2. It has flaws, and yes, believe me, I know that ME1 and ME3 have flaws also. I know that we didn't go over what all of them were in this video, but trust me, I've played all of these games more than a dozen times. I know their flaws quite well. But I also know that I love Mass Effect 1 despite all of its flaws. And I've loved Mass Effect 3 all this time, even though the ending isn't the best and the forced decisions and pacing during the opening couple of missions are still weird to this day. But that's because both ME1 and ME3 give us the absolute best in their respective specialties. ME1 for RPG elements, lore, and world building, ME3 for large-scale galaxy-changing decisions and the best combat in the series. Especially in the Legendary Edition, it's never been more clear how well these two hold up, while on the flip side, it's never been more clear that we, all of us, including me, made Mass Effect 2 the de facto king of the trilogy because ME1 lacked polish and because ME3 got caught up in an ending controversy. Mass Effect 2 does not come in first anymore when ranking the Mass Effect trilogy games. It comes in last. In my new ranking of trilogy titles, I now place Mass Effect 2 in third place, Mass Effect 3 in second place, and Mass Effect 1 in a legendary comeback is now my favorite game in this series, and honestly, after more than a decade since I first played it, my new favorite game of all time. This has been The Exalted March, a conversation about storytelling and design in video games. If you like this video, please consider hitting the like button, and if you'd like to be informed of all future videos, please consider hitting the subscribe button and the bell notification icon. I have been thinking about this topic a lot over the past few weeks, and I'm so glad that I finally get to share this video with you guys. I know I've been teasing it for a couple of weeks now, so here it is. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I have no doubt that you will all let me know exactly what you think on this one. I'm gonna grab myself a drink or something and have a fun time reading the comments on this one. There's more stuff coming up, including more tips and build advice for Mass Effect 3 specifically, and maybe there may even be some Andromeda content coming in the future, right? Some of you may be deciding to give Mass Effect Andromeda another shot, so that's a thing, possibly. I hope you stick around to see what I'm working on next, but as always, I appreciate your time and support. Thanks for watching, and thank you for listening.